Do you hear it? The echoes of the past, the whispers of forgotten truths, fragments of memories lost in the shadows. Welcome to BRAINROT, Echoes, where we bring you stories long buried, unravel mysteries cloaked by time, and guide you through the darkest corners of the mind and the universe. Each video is more than just content. It's an echo resonating deep within, urging you to question, to wonder, to explore. Backend index pointing right, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and join us in listening to the echoes the world tried to silence. The Parents' Hunt. Admiral Chen's voice carried a dangerous edge that made the junior intelligence officer shrink back in his seat. We intercepted communications indicating the Xylos have taken human children from the Epsilon colony, sir. Lieutenant Park swallowed hard. Approximately 37 of them. They apparently thought taking offspring would be an effective deterrent against human expansion into that sector. The Admiral's laugh was entirely devoid of humor. Those poor, stupid bastards. They actually think they're the predators in this scenario. She turned to her communications officer. Give me a direct line to the Security Council and someone wake up the 7th Fleet. The Xylos, like most spacefaring species, were thoroughly logical beings. They had carefully analyzed human military capabilities, industrial capacity, and technological advancement. They had run the numbers through their most sophisticated prediction matrices. They had concluded that a precisely targeted operation against a vulnerable human population would force a favorable diplomatic resolution. What they had failed to account for was that humans were fundamentally the galaxy's apex predators. Not because of their technology or their weapons, though those were certainly formidable, but because of something far more primal. They were persistence hunters whose ancestors had chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. And now, the Xylos had taken their children. High Commander Zexel of the Xylos Hegemony was feeling quite pleased with himself as he reviewed the operation reports. The raid had gone perfectly in and out with minimal casualties, and now they had excellent leverage for the upcoming territory negotiations. He flexed his primary manipulator appendages in satisfaction. High Commander, his aide interrupted, we're detecting multiple human vessels entering the system already. How interesting. Patch through their communication when it arrives. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing a human female with steel gray hair and eyes that reminded Zexel uncomfortably of the apex predators from his homeworld. This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Fleet. You have taken our children. Return them immediately and surrender yourselves for trial, or we will demonstrate exactly why humans spent thousands of years as pursuit predators before we developed tools. Zexel's secondary heart skipped a beat, but he maintained his composure. Admiral, let's be reasonable. We both know that any military action would risk harm to your offspring. I suggest we discuss terms for their safe return. The human smile made all four of his hearts skip simultaneously. Oh, you misunderstand. That wasn't a threat. It was a courtesy notice. We're already inside your defensive perimeter. The aide's manipulators flew across the control panel. Impossible. Our sensors would have. Wait. Their voice trembled. High Commander, we're detecting multiple small craft that appear to have been drifting in with the system's natural debris field. They're powering up now. Clever, Zexel admitted. But our station defenses are currently being sabotaged by the special operations team that arrived 3 days ago, disguised as a maintenance crew. Admiral Chen finished for him. Like I said, persistence hunters. We've been setting this up since about 2 hours after you took the children. The station's lights flickered and died, replaced by the red glow of emergency systems. Alarms began blaring from multiple sections simultaneously. That's not possible, Zexel whispered. Our security protocols were designed by beings who think linearly, came a new voice from behind him. He spun to find a human male in black combat gear, standing where his aide had been moments before. The adaptive camouflage system powered down, revealing more humans emerging from what had appeared to be ordinary walls and fixtures. Hello, High Commander, the human said pleasantly. I'm Lieutenant Park. We need to have a chat about proper interspecies relations and why taking children is generally considered a bad idea. The rescue operation itself was almost anticlimactic, with the station's defenses compromised and human ships appearing seemingly from nowhere. The Xylo's resistance crumbled in under an hour. The children were found unharmed, if somewhat annoying, in a converted cargo bay. They didn't even let us use the entertainment systems, complained 8-year-old Sarah Martinez to her rescuer. Just kept talking about leverage and diplomatic protocols. Super boring. That must have been terrible, Lieutenant Park said sympathetically as he led the children to the extraction point. Did they at least feed you properly? The food was weird, 12-year-old Marcus Chun, no relation to the Admiral, reported, but Joey figured out how to hack their food synthesizer on day 2. We've been having ice cream for dinner ever since. Park made a mental note to recommend Joey for early admission to the fleet's cyber warfare program. In the aftermath, as various dignitaries and diplomatic corps representatives gathered to discuss the incident, Admiral Chen found herself sharing a drink with the Arcturian ambassador. I must admit, the ambassador said, their crystalline form refracting the light as they gestured, we were somewhat concerned by how quickly your species mobilized for full-scale war. We didn't mobilize for war, Chen corrected, sipping her whiskey. That would have involved actually moving our battle fleets and calling up reserves. This was just a recovery operation. You penetrated the defenses of one of the most secure facilities in the sector, disabled a military station that stood for 3 centuries, and had special forces operators in place within days, the ambassador pointed out. All without anyone noticing until you wanted them to notice. Like I told the High Commander, persistence hunters. Humans spent millions of years evolving to be really, really good at chasing things down. These days we just do it with spaceships and spec ops teams instead of on foot. The ambassador's crystalline surface rippled, and what Chun had learned was their equivalent of a shudder. Remind me never to get on humanity's bad side. Oh, this wasn't humanity's bad side, Chen said cheerfully. This was just parents getting their kids back. If we'd been genuinely angry, we'd have dismantled their entire government structure and rewritten their cultural understanding of consequences. She paused thoughtfully. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Lieutenant Park. The intelligence officer materialized from somewhere nearby. Chen had long since stopped asking how he did that. Yes, Admiral. Draft up a proposal for a cultural exchange program with the Xylos. Heavy emphasis on human literary classics. Let's start them off with some nice, subtle ones. The Count of Monte, Cristo, John Wick, that sort of thing. Very good, sir. Any particular message we're trying to convey? Chen smiled. Oh, just a friendly reminder about the difference between being technologically advanced and being apex predators. And maybe something about the importance of not taking other species' children. 3 months later, High Commander Zexel, now serving as the Xylo's cultural liaison officer as part of his rehabilitation program, was giving a presentation to the Hegemony Strategic Planning Council. And so, in conclusion, he said, gesturing to the final slide with still shaking manipulators, I cannot emphasize strongly enough that any strategic analysis of human capabilities must account for the following factors. 1. They never stop. 2. They are far more patient than their general demeanor suggests. 3. They have elevated tactical sneakiness to an art form. And 4. Under no circumstances are we to ever again consider operations involving their offspring. He paused, then added, they've also introduced me to something called action movies, which I believe are actually documentary films designed to warn other species about their capabilities. I've included several in the recommended viewing materials attached to your briefing packets. One of the council members raised an appendage. Surely these movies are entertainment products, not actual documentation? Zexel stared at them with all 4 eyes. That's exactly what I thought about the one called Taken until I watched our own security footage from the rescue operation. Trust me, they're warnings. You know what the really funny part is? Lieutenant Park said to Admiral Chen as they watched the edited highlights of Zexel's presentation. We didn't even have to embellish anything. Just showed them our actual historical documents and entertainment media. Did you include the nature documentaries about persistence hunting like I suggested? Yes, sir. The one about human tribes running down gazelles caused 3 council members to emit in distress. He paused. though I'm still not sure about including the primary school documentation. Chen grinned. What? You mean the footage of human children playing tag and hide and seek? Critical tactical intelligence, Lieutenant. Shows natural aptitude for pursuit and stealth operations. If you say so, sir. Park checked his tablet. By the way, little Joey Chen has already completed the first year's curriculum for the cyber warfare program in 3 weeks. Good to hear. By the way, how's the cultural exchange program going? Extremely well. The Xylos have become particularly interested in human classical literature. They've started a book club, currently working through The Princess Bride. Excellent choice. Good lessons about revenge there. That's what Zexel said, though he seemed somewhat concerned about the to the pain speech. Chen's smile would have made a shark proud. As he should be. As he should be. The thing about humans, as the galaxy was learning, wasn't that they were the strongest, fastest, or most technologically advanced species. They weren't even the most naturally aggressive. What made humans unique and uniquely terrifying was their absolute unwavering persistence when pursuing a goal, combined with their remarkable creativity in achieving those goals. Take, for example, the fact that within 6 months of the Epsilon colony incident, the Xylos had voluntarily joined the human-led interstellar cultural exchange program, established mandatory classes in human psychology and history for all military personnel, created an entire academic discipline dedicated to studying human entertainment media for strategic insights, and developed a peculiar obsession with human children's games, which they insisted were actually military training exercises in disguise. As Admiral Chen liked to point out, humanity didn't need to conquer the galaxy. They just needed to convince everyone else that trying to conquer them would be far too much trouble to be worth the effort. It's all about perspective, she explained to the Arcturian ambassador during one of their regular drinks. Most species look at humans and see a relatively young, moderately advanced civilization. What they should see is a species that spent millions of years evolving to chase things until they die of exhaustion, then developed spaceships and took their predatory nature with them to the stars. The ambassador noted. Oh no, Chen corrected. We're not predators anymore. We're something much worse. We're parents who are really good at hunting things down. The predator just wants to eat you. The parent whose child you've threatened wants to ensure that you, your entire species, and anyone who ever thought about copying you learns a very permanent lesson about why that was a bad idea. She smiled and raised her glass. To cultural exchange. The ambassador's crystalline form rippled in somewhat nervous agreement. To cultural exchange. And to never, ever making humanity angry. Don't worry, Chen assured them. We're actually quite nice once you get to know us. Just ask the Xylos. I hear their book club is starting Les Miserables next week. Isn't that the one about obsessive pursuit and the consequences of injustice? Why, yes, it is. The ambassador made a mental note to suggest updating their own species' first contact protocols. Specifically, the section about handling human children needed to be revised from exercise standard care with offspring to do not touch the children or they will hunt you forever. Some lessons, after all, were best learned from other people's mistakes. 6 months after the Epsilon colony incident, an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was called. The topic, growing concerns about humanity's aggressive cultural expansion. I must protest, the Relian delegate declared, their bioluminescent patterns flashing in agitation. The humans are systematically dismantling our societal norms through their so-called cultural exchange programs. Admiral Chen, attending as Earth's representative, raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware that sharing literature and organizing book clubs constituted dismantling society. That's exactly my point. The Relian patterns shifted to deep red. The Xylos have completely revolutionized their educational system based on human models. They've instituted something called recess in all their schools. Their military academies now include courses on hide-and-seek strategies. This is clearly a form of psychological warfare. I assure you, Chen said diplomatically, that children playing games during scheduled breaks is not a military action, though I must say the Xylos students have shown remarkable improvement in their problem-solving capabilities since the changes were implemented. Lieutenant Park, standing quietly behind Chen's chair, managed to keep his face completely neutral as he recalled the latest intelligence report about the Xylo's innovative applications of playground game theory to military strategy. Meanwhile, in the newly established Human Cultural Studies Department at the Xylo's Military Academy, Professor Zexel was giving a lecture on human tactical innovations. Today's case study, he announced to his class, examines the human concept of tag. Pay particular attention to the psychological implications of the no tagbacks rule and its applications to modern warfare. A student raised an appendage. Professor, is it true that human children voluntarily engage in pursuit training exercises without any supervision or formal instruction? Excellent question. Yes, this natural inclination toward chase-based recreational activities demonstrates their species' innate hunting instincts. Now, let's analyze the strategic principles behind Capture the Flag. Back in her office after the council meeting, Chen reviewed the latest cultural exchange reports with a satisfaction that bordered on smugness. The Andromedans have requested permission to establish a youth sports program modeled after human schools, Park noted, scrolling through his tablet. They're particularly interested in something called dodgeball. Approved, Chen said immediately. Make sure we send them the standard equipment package and suggest they might enjoy baseball as well. Good lessons about the importance of defense and anticipating where your target will be. The Sentients have submitted a formal protest about human entertainment media corrupting their youth, Park continued. Apparently their teenagers have started organizing something called laser tag tournaments. Chen's smile widened. How tragic. We should send a cultural attaché to help them properly structure these tournaments for safety reasons, of course. Of course, Park agreed blandly. On a related note, the Special Operations Training Program has received an unprecedented number of applications from non-human species. The Xylos alone have submitted over 300 candidates. Well, we can hardly refuse our allies' interest in joint training exercises, can we? Chen said. Speaking of which, how's young Joey doing? He's completed the advanced cyber warfare curriculum and has started teaching his own class to a mixed group of human and Xylos students. Park paused. The Xylos students have started calling him the Predator. Chen laughed. Does he know that's what they call him? Yes, sir. He thinks it's hilarious. He started wearing black hoodies to class and occasionally hacks their personal devices to play the Jaws theme when he approaches. That boy's going to go far, Chen said proudly. Any other updates? The Arcturian ambassador has requested another meeting. Something about discussing the alarming spread of human board games throughout the sector. Ah, yes. I heard the Xylos have become particularly fond of chess. Something about it being a perfect metaphor for human strategic thinking, appearing to sacrifice pieces while setting up an inevitable checkmate. They've also started a debate club, Park added. Their first topic is resolved. Human children's games are actually military training exercises disguised as entertainment. The Arcturian ambassador's crystalline form was vibrating with concern as they met with Chun later that week. Admiral, you must understand our position. In the past 6 months, human cultural influence has spread faster than any species in recorded history. The Xylos have gone from being one of the most militant species in the galaxy to organizing intergalactic book clubs. I fail to see the problem, Chen replied mildly. Surely promoting peaceful cultural exchange is preferable to military confrontation? But that's just it. You're not using military force. You're somehow convincing everyone to voluntarily adopt human practices. The Relians have started teaching their young about something called tag. The Sentients are building recreational facilities they call playgrounds. Even the Andromedans are talking about implementing physical education programs. Chun sipped her whiskey thoughtfully. Ambassador, let me tell you a story about human history. Long before we developed technology, we survived by being really, really good at 2 things. Chasing things down and teaching our children how to chase things down. Everything else, our tools, our societies, our games develop from those basic skills. So you admit these cultural programs are actually about spreading human hunting behaviors. Not at all. They're about sharing the ways humans learn to channel those instincts into productive activities. Take chess, for instance. It teaches strategic thinking, patience, and the ability to plan multiple moves ahead. Or hide and seek, which develops spatial awareness and tactical thinking. These aren't military training exercises. They're games that helped us develop as a species. And the fact that they're making other species think more like humans. Chen smiled. Well, that's just a fortunate side effect, isn't it? In the Xylos Military Academy's Recreational Center, a facility that definitely hadn't existed 6 months ago, a group of cadets was engaged in an intense game of laser tag. Remember the human principle of strategic retreat? Team leader Vexer called out as they fell back to a defensive position. Sometimes you must appear to flee in order to draw your pursuit into an ambush. Like in that human documentary about the small mammal and the pursuit predator. Tom and Jerry, I believe it was called, another cadet replied. In the observation room above, Professor Zexel watched with pride as his students applied their human cultural studies lessons to practical exercises. Remarkable progress, he noted to his assistant. 6 months ago, they would have simply charged forward in a direct assault. Now look at them, using cover, setting up crossfires, even implementing the no camping rule we learned from human gaming protocols. The human approach to education is certainly unique, the assistant agreed, though I'm still not entirely convinced that Duck, Duck, Goose is actually a lesson in psychological warfare and target selection. Zexel's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Have you ever played it? The psychological pressure of walking around the circle, everyone wondering if they'll be chosen, it's brilliant training for maintaining composure under stress. Back on Earth, the Security Council was reviewing the latest reports on the cultural exchange program's progress. The Xylos have submitted a proposal for an intergalactic sports competition, Park reported. They're calling it the Galactic Games. Let me guess, Chen said. They want to include capture the flag, dodgeball, and laser tag, among others. They've also requested permission to introduce something called Red Rover to their physical training programs. Chen's laugh echoed through the chamber. You know, when we started this program, I expected it would take years to change attitudes about human expansion. Instead, we've got half the galaxy voluntarily adopting our children's games as training exercises. The power of play, Park agreed, though I'm a bit concerned about the Xylos' interpretation of red light, green light as an exercise in stealth movement and threat detection. Well, they're not entirely wrong, Chun mused. The real question is, should we introduce them to Simon Says now, or wait until they've fully processed the strategic implications of Mother, May I? As the cultural exchange program continued to expand, the galaxy was witnessing an unprecedented transformation. Species that had once viewed humans with suspicion or fear were now eagerly adopting their recreational practices, albeit often with their own unique interpretations. The Xylos had gone from potential adversaries to enthusiastic students of human culture, though their tendency to analyze everything as military training occasionally led to some interesting misunderstandings. The Andromedans were revolutionizing their educational system around human-inspired active learning principles. Even the traditionally isolationist Relians were organizing intergalactic sports tournaments. And at the center of it all, humanity watched with amused satisfaction as their children's games gradually reshaped galactic civilization. As Admiral Chen often remarked, they hadn't needed to demonstrate their capabilities as persistence predators. They'd simply shown the galaxy how they taught their young to become them. The most interesting part? Every species thought they were studying humanity, while humanity was quietly studying how each species adapted their games. After all, the best way to understand someone was to see how they played. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a young Xylos was teaching a human child their species' variant of hide-and-seek, while a group of Andromedan younglings debated the optimal strategy for a game of intergalactic capture the flag. The future of galactic civilization wasn't being written in treaty rooms or on battlefields. It was being shaped in playgrounds, summer camps, and youth centers across the stars. And humanity, true to form, was playing the longest game of all. The end, until the next game begins.